Welcome back again to the channel. Today I have selected a very renowned short story for our discussion, Rebati. It is written by Fakir Mohan Senapati, and I have taken this particular short story from this collection called Modern Indian Writing in English Translation, a multilingual anthology edited by Dhananjay Kapse and from the Worldview publication. So this is the text. From the page 179 to 189, you can get this text. The basic info. Rebati is a short story by Fakir Mohan Senapati published in 1898. It is considered first ever short story published in Odia language. So this is an Odia short story, a very renowned one. The story is a celebration, or rather as an example of Fakir Mohan's reformist zeal. And through this text, Fakir Mohan Senapati tried to convey the message to the society, to those underprivileged people. He supported those underprivileged people. He focused on this issue of educating the girl child. And many women writers of Odia language, such as Sarala Devi, Kuntala Kumari, Sabat, Kokila Devi, they followed this tradition of writing of Fakir Mohan Senapati. It has also influenced the short story writers of Odisha at a later period in early 1980s. Jagadish Mohanty wrote a story based on the protagonist character Rebati, and it made a new tradition. Since then, hundreds of stories were written on women's agony, where Rebati represents women's fate in the changing scenario of the time. Now, before beginning, let me tell you about the ironical fact of this, that girls and education are one of the most controversial issues of Indian history. And we are living, as we know, that in the 21st century, where we are talking about the smart cities, bullet trains, even the smart classes are introduced already to the different schools. But on the other side, government is forced to turn off the campaign Beti Padhao, Beti Bachao Andolan. This type of 21st century campaign shows that till today, India did not really change on the matter of girls' education. In 2015, University of Aligarh announced that girls are not allowed to enter into the library. So, from this scenario, where this is very typical, in 1898, a short story called Rebati focused on the basic need of education of the girls. And still today, we are struggling throughout that period. We are struggling to know about this core of the truth. And therefore, Beti Padhao, Beti Bachao Andolan, such Andolans are arising. It is simply the ironical part of our whole society, of the whole country. Moreover, about this particular text, I have gathered certain informations, and those informations are given in these three separate ways. Fakir Mohan Senapati was indeed ahead of his time. We naturally understand it. The social issues he wrote about were controversial and yet ignited the reader's thoughts against social injustices. On the 102nd death anniversary on June 14th, 2021, Dhauli Books published a book titled Rebati, Speaking in Tongues, which features translations of the story acclaimed authors in 36 languages. So we can understand the relevance of the text. We can also understand the popularity of the text. This covers 23 scheduled languages and 2 non-scheduled languages of India and 12 foreign languages such as German, Japanese, Russian, French, Spanish, Polish, Hebrew, Turkish, Sinhalese, Balochi, Uzbek and Punjabi, and Shahamukhi besides Nepali. So these are the languages in which the text has been translated so far. Now, to go into the deep of the text, we have to understand there are certain characters, and there are major and minor characters, as I have divided into this. Major characters, we have Shyambandhu, Basudev, grandmother, and Rebati's grandmother, definitely, and Rebati herself. Minor characters include Rebati's mother, Rana Sethi, Harisa, because they are not very focused. However, they have a minimum amount of influence in the text, and they're also significant, but not as much talked about like the major characters. There are themes, various themes. However, I have pinpointed 3 major sections here, although those themes are not separately described in this video. They are throughout the story. When I am going to narrate the story in a different way, we will discuss about all this. Now, these three themes: education, superstition, and position of female in a society. So these are the basic themes of the text. Now, let us go into the basic storylines. The story thus begins. So this is the place of the story called Patpur, where Shyambandhu Mohan's family lived. And who is Shyambandhu? Is a simple, straightforward man. And his family, about his family, so he has a mother in his family, he and his wife, Shyambandhu and his wife, and their only daughter, aged 10, Rebati. Now, we have to go back to the past, previous 2 years back. There's a flashback where DIOP schools opened an upper primary school. And the only teacher was named Basudev. And here I have pointed out certain features of Basudev as described in the text. So he is a Karan by caste, handsome in every way, graduated from the training school. Epileptic fits left a scar on his face, however the scar seemed to suit him. Never raised his head to look at anyone while walking through the village. Lost his parents when he was a child, built a good relationship with Shyambandhu family. So this is in a nutshell about Vasudev, the only teacher of that school. Shyambandhu learned from Basu there was a school for girls at Cuttack. Thus he developed a desire to give some education to Rebati. So this is also a very significant aspect of the text, that Shyambandhu has this desire. He wants to be forward. He wants to get his girl in an educated format. So he has the desire to make her girl educated. So this is also significant from the point of view of a male-dominated society, where these people are not very prone to, they do not think that their girls should be educated. But here we have found a person, Shyambandhu, who literally wants to get ahead of his time, like Fakir Mohan Senapati perhaps. Now there are two parts: one who agreed to this, that Rebati must need education; another who doesn't want the education of a female in a family at all. So from the agreed part, there are Shyambandhu, Shyambandhu's wife, that means Rebati's mother, Rebati's father, Basu the teacher, and Rebati herself. Now who is opposing directly? It is Rebati's grandmother, who is continuously saying that girls shouldn't be educated at all. Now Rebati's Vidyarambha, she starts her education. Sitanath Babu's Pratham Part, the first book Vasudev gave to her, and Vasudev taught her from the day of Sri Panchami. So Rebati progressed fast with the studies in the next 2 years. So from the flashback of the 2 years, next 2 years, that means it is a forward movement of the time. Now by this time she has learnt to that extent that she could read Madhu Babu's Chandmala fluently without a pause. An indicative discussion between Shyambandhu and his mother regarding the marriage of Basudev and Rebati occurred finally. Now it was inevitable, I suppose, because Basudev was connected to the family of Shyambandhu, and because he was a good person at heart and a very good educated person. So Shyambandhu literally has to think about the marriage of Rebati with Basudev. Therefore, this indicates why the discussion is indicated, because there is a sentence which states that what else was I inquiring about till now? Yes, he is a good Karan, a poor boy but high caste. So Shyambandhu's mother, that means Rebati's grandmother, asked him, have you inquired? As if it's a very natural question, as if they have already discussed it earlier, although those conversations are not in the text, but as if they have already discussed it. And as Shyambandhu's mother asked about Basudev, Shyambandhu replied that yes, I was actually inquiring about his caste. So in a society where caste is a very serious issue, caste literally matters. Even today, even in our society, still today, we are facing different aspects of castes, different problems regarding castes. So even in that day, there is no difference. So from that to this, very minimum difference I particularly have seen so far. Yes, there is another speech that, and God knows what she understood of what was said, but there was a noticeable change in her behavior from that day onwards. This is an indication that Rebati heard their conversation, and there was indeed a change in her mind, that noticeable change, and there are references how that noticeable change is actually bringing forefront. These are the noticeable changes that I have gathered. So visibly embarrassed, Basudev taught her in front of her father when Basudev was teaching, or Basudev was teaching in front of Rebati's father. Rebati got embarrassed. So she was more prone to giggle at times with no reason. Silently, she said yes when response was called off, run away laughingly at the end of the session, wait for Basu outside, but she would promptly get inside at the sight of Basu. These are the indicative measures, these are the indications rather, which show that there are indeed noticeable changes in Rebati after listening to the session. Now, as fortune goes not always well, so here comes the villain. So there is a very good story, and it moves very straightforward, very smoothly. But here, that unexpected but very common villain enters. And what was that? Society here again, with the entrance of the villain, further revealed. 2 years passed, and on the spring day of Falgun, epidemic cholera struck. This is the very common but unexpected villain. Nobody wants it. Nobody demanded that that villain should enter. So cholera's outbreak, and Shyambandhu died, leaving the charge on Basudev. I am moving very fast like a Telugu movie because there are not much ideas reflected if I describe how or in what way the process of the death of Shyambandhu. Shyambandhu died, and that is good enough reason to carry forward this conversation. So Shyambandhu died, leaving the charge on Basudev. Nobody wished to take any responsibility, and naturally, because the epidemic was in the village, all doors were closed. So the day Shyambandhu died, on that very day, Shyambandhu handed over the charges of the family and related aspects to Basudev, because he was working under Zamindar, and he had the duty to collect the taxes from the commoners, from the villages. Now all of the charges perhaps he relied on Basudev, and because nobody was interested to serve, because he was struck by the epidemic cholera, Basudev was there. Now Dhobi Rana Sethi, and an unknown character, however, a minor one, but he has also a significant part in the story. Experience was ready to oblige on these occasions, however only on the current house. See, this is the difference. So these people do not go to those lower caste people or the house of the lower caste people, even if they had the problems, even if they faced greater problems than this. So this Dhobi Rana Sethi, who was very obliged to do such things, but he was only interested in the current houses. This is another indication the society was not very up to date. Dhobi Rana Sethi is one of the example of that. There will be more examples in the same text. Now, Rebati's mother felt the urge. So, see, this is very painful, critical, and on the sympathetic ground, if we think this is literally unbearable at some point of time. So Rebati's mother felt the urge immediately after the return from the cremation ground to go out and ease herself. So there is an indication again that Rebati's mother committed suicide. Now that happened a lot in those times because nobody was there to take care, look after, because the urge was so heavy, so distressful, so disappointing. Now wives generally do not take that pressure much, so they usually try to commit suicide. Perhaps Rebati's mother did such kind of attempt. Now, what we generally gather from this scenario: society is very cruel as usual. Caste is indeed a factor even today. How helpless the wives are, the death of Rebati's mother proves that. The effect of the epidemic and the poorer condition of the villages. Nothing is permanent and has an everlasting effect. From the beginning, it seemed to us that Shyambandhu's family is a very prosperous family and there will be no problems at all. See, all of a sudden, everything changed. This epidemic, the cholera, struck Shyambandhu. Shyambandhu died, and the whole thing's changed. So if you can understand that life is not a fixed aspect that you can rely on, anything may happen anytime. So you have to be prepared. Such ideas happened in the text, and that is why number 5 is here. Number 6 is a strong character Rana Seti is introduced where the ironical hint is specified. What is the irony? That he is only going to serve on the Koran houses. Basudev's character is further strengthened because Basudev didn't leave the family and he was still there. He supports the family even after the mishap in the family. Benevolence has its limit. Basu is a very benevolent character. There is no doubt about it. But the point is that to some extent these characters also vanish, and therefore pain becomes more inflictive, excruciating. Now, time and tide wait for no one. This is a universal speech, universal comment, and also a line from the text. And why? 3 months passed and 4 things happened to the family. So after the death of Shyambandhu, 3 months have already passed, and 4 things. What are those 4 things? First, the 2 bullocks were sold in 7.5 rupees to meet the expenses of the funeral rites. The field laborer left the house on the Dol Purnima day. The zamindar took also the 3.5 acres of land allotted to Shyambandhu for cultivation, and the agents of zamindar took them away by force. So what happened when the father figure died? These happened to the family of Shyambandhu because he was no more. This is the society. I shouldn't say that was the society. This is the society because the same effect is still applicable even in present situation. Now, Basudev tried to help the family, but his helps go in vain. What are the helps? First, he offered money, but they didn't accept. Second, taking few copper coin from the old woman, bought them vegetables. These are the helps. Now, why these helps go in vain? Because of the self-respect. Perhaps both Rebati's grandmother and Rebati have the self-respect within them, and therefore they didn't accept the money offered by Basudev. And superstition. Why superstition? Because this is interesting. The gaping roof badly needed rethatching, but the job was yet not to be done because the period was not considered propitious. So we have to fix a time, fix a moment to do something. So these people, their roofs have been destroyed, and because their roofs have been destroyed, Basudev was trying to help them by rethatching the roof, but that the time was not good enough because there should be a proper time when you should rethatch. So it will be meant for good ideas. If you do that particular task in a particular time, that means you are doing appropriately, idealistic way. So this is the level of superstition. As I was saying in the previous pages that the theme of the text is superstition. This is the superstition in the society. This is the superstition in the families. Now, who is to blame for all these misfortunes? Very natural. Later in one of the pages, I have introduced the feministic point of view, and that I have taken from someone. I will explain that. But here, this is the point. Who is to blame for all these misfortunes? Definitely Rebati, or to be specific, because she had dared to study. So this is the reason why all these misfortunes happen. And what are these misfortunes? Interestingly, grandmother lost her eyesight, zamindar's men took away the cows, field hand left, bullocks had to be sold, she became a girl of ill omen, son and daughter-in-law had to die. So these are the aspects that indeed happened because Rebati tried to read. So this is the theme of education, how the position of a female in a society pinpointed these ideas. The next slide, how is Rebati now? Rebati's condition is not good. See, there are random ideas. So he doesn't speak nowadays, reduced to thin and bones, spent sleepless nights, lost her appetite, incessant flow of tears, remained silent, suffered a breakdown. It's very natural. And this is a cruel representation of the situation and the society's pressure to a little girl. Noteworthy that human being never should be contented with his or her situation. Anytime the situation may change, that's what exactly I told in the earlier page. So Rebati was earlier very happy. She was contented. She was satisfied with her life to some extent. She was even dreaming about Vasudev. See what happened all of a sudden. The complete scenario was changed. Now 5 months passed. In the summer month of Jeshta, at midday, Basudev informed that he will be off for 5 days. For the DI of schools wanted to talk about the studies of the children of primary schools at Hariharpur police station. Now, in this situation, characters are involved where Rebati's grandmother tried to give him advice that do not do such and such things, do not go in the sun, etc. Rebati definitely was shocked, and Vasudeva's mind was somehow agitated. So 3 characters are here: grandmother, Vasudeva and Rebati. Different segments of the characters are revealed in this scene. Whereas grandmother's sympathetic attitude is revealed, Vasudeva's responsible attitude is revealed, and Rebati's emotional part is revealed. She lost control after hearing Vasudev's words. So that was the only hope that remained for them. And even after the death of her father and mother, she was still there because Basudev was there. Basudev was helping. Basudev was trying to do something. That was the least hope in the family as well as in her or within her. Now, after hearing this, that Basudev is going to be off for 5 days, see, it was darkness all over, both inside and outside. This is again the line from the text. Now, Love in the Time of Cholera, as you have heard the name definitely of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, is a very interesting name of a novel. Love in the Time of Cholera. Something happened here. So I have given here a complete speech. Let me read it out. Rebati kept staring at Basu. It was different from the way she used to look at him earlier, when she would lower her eyes as Basu looked back at her. But she was not inclined to do so now. Basu's eyes were also not behaving the same as before, when he wanted to keep looking at her and still more, but couldn't. There was no pulling back now. Their eyes met, and it was not possible for either to withdraw them. However, Basu left eventually, and the evening grew dark. Yet Rebati was still there, looking unblinkingly at the void. She gave a start when she heard her grandmother calling her, and then she realized that it was darkness all over, both inside and outside. So that was the moment when their somehow love was building. They were falling for each other, and these responsible eyes met the emotional eyes, and there clicked something. That happened when you try to express yourself. And even in such a situation, look at the language. Although this is a translation, however, even through the translation we can understand that love in the time of cholera was so astonishingly true that it gives you a boost. And even while reading this, we can understand that very good bond between Rebati and Basudev. And Basu left, and unfortunately never returned. 6 days passed. Basu was also struck by the same epidemic and died. He was blamed because of his sinful act of teaching Rebati. See, Basudev also was dead, and he was also blamed for his ingenious act of teaching a girl. Look at the society now. This is the representation of society. This is what is happening at that time. Now, Rebati's condition naturally, very naturally went down. In the following days, Rebati experienced poorer health conditions, and all of those happened because she wanted to study. For 6 days, she had a high fever and lost consciousness. When Rebati gained consciousness, her grandmother thought that the poor girl had not had even a drop of water in the last 6 days and should get well with some food inside her. That was again generous of her, because this little incident actually gives us an insight into the grandmother's character, that she has a generous heart somehow. She is not totally bad. She went to Harisa, one grocery shop owner. Grandmother went to Harisa with a leaking pot if she could get something edible for it in exchange. Harisa is a significant character, although he is a minor character, but he is significant in different perspective. Because Harisa first tried to drive hard bargain. He didn't want to give anything to Rebati's grandmother. Second, finally he gave 4 measures of rice, half measure of pulses and some salt in exchange of the pot. Now, being a minor character, why is he so important? The reason is people like Harissa is just a representation, and people like Harissa don't care in what state you are in. They only understand their worth, profit and loss, and they don't show mercy or sympathy to the destitute. Naturally, when Rebati's grandmother was there, he must help her. Instead of helping her, he tried to gather his own benefits. There lies the point. Harissa therefore represents a class in the then society, that means the contemporary society, where they always dominate the underprivileged. This character like Harissa shows also the thematic aspect of the story, that the story is not only about Rebati, Basu or education and the grandmother, the story is also about the society and the values related to it. This also points out the utilitarianism in the society. They judge everything on their value, the value judgment. So Harissa is that kind of representation of the society where Fakir Mohan Senapati perhaps tried to focus that yes, society is not only built with good people like Basudev, there are in a maximum number different people who are not good enough, and they even have not the benevolence, they have not the limited shame, and they have not the heart to help. Therefore Harissa is important here. Now meanwhile Rebati was getting deeper into a state of unconsciousness. This follows her death. But before Rebati dies, there are beautiful as well as painful description of her last state. I'm not going to give that description at all, but here she remembers her father and mother in her last moments, and she saw the evening star twinkling with an incessant glow. See here, evening star. The stars seemed to her dear mother, all love and joy and peace, who stretched out her hands to take her in her arms. Significantly here, for the second time, there is a reference of Rebati's mother. There was references of Rebati's father Shyambandhu a lot of times throughout the text, but about her mother, that was the first time when she committed suicide perhaps, and this is the second time at the end. So this also includes a natural description of her mother and mother's behavior and the impact. No more sounds could be heard in the darkness except for the intake of her breath. The breath grew intense and then a prolonged sigh and two indistinct sounds, ma, ma, and then it was still and silent. So Rebati died eventually. She has to die. In the whole story, Rebati's mother is mentioned when she perhaps committed suicide. Now when Rebati is remembered, she comes again. Yes, she is portrayed differently with a great impact upon Rebati. Now what is this portrayal? Has deeper impact upon Rebati, caring, sensitive, and loves nature. She was also upgraded. Upgradation was there because she supported Rebati's education. And moreover that she planted a guava tree, so her love of nature was also another perspective of the text. Rebati is here representing that mother, the motherly feeling in the lines. Her grandmother finally discovered Rebati's dead body, and the moment she understood the bitter truth, she too died. The only sound that remains, you Rebati, you Rebi, you rotten, miserable wretch. So the whole family was finished just like that. That was the pain inflicted within the hearts of the readers while reading through the text. This is not only indicative about the society, this is also indicative about the human nature. The kind of human nature that are displayed throughout the text. Actually what we are. This is a representation rather of ourselves. Now, the last line that you Rebati, you Rebi, you rotten miserable wretch. It is the voice of the grandmother who literally from the beginning didn't want to get involved into the education of Rebati. Even she didn't support that Rebati should be educated. Now this rotten miserable wretch, Rebati is indeed a rotten miserable wretch, because it was she for whom the whole aspect happened. She was the representation of that humankind. She was also the representation of that unfulfilled desire. She was the representation of that symbolic protest. So that miserable wretch therefore becomes an irony. Now there are certain aspects that I would like to discuss too, such as Rebati as a gendered subaltern. Now, this I have taken from Ramesh Chandra Odigare, as you can see here at the end. Ramesh Chandra Odigare's text named Fakir Mohan Senapati's Rebati, the Modern Day Malala. European Academy's research was published in volume 4, issue 2, May 2016 and 9.5. So here Rebati is a gender subaltern. Ramesh Chandra Odigare took the concept from Gayatri Chakravarti's Spivaks and the subaltern speak. So while elaborating the term from Spivak, he states that the gender subaltern is the figure of the woman who disappears between patriarchy and imperialism. Similarly, Rebati disappears because we never hear her speak about herself. Rebati, the gender subaltern in this context, is forced to become a third world woman, caught in teeth of tradition and modernity. Fakir Mohan's social critic posits Rebati as caught between modernization and a tradition that grudges her aspiration and holds her responsible for defeating the spiritual duties as an Indian woman. The vibrant girl who was once not afraid to voice her desire for education. Father, I do want to study. St. Pierre 14, here is the excerpt, and the text that Ramesh Chandra Odigare followed was that version. So I just quoted those lines and exactly represented them in the page. So this is from Fakir Mohan Senapati's Rebati, the Modern Day Malala. Is suddenly muted as a gender subaltern, she literally disappears from center stage and is relegated to the main margins of our little world. She is violently shuttled between nature and culture and assumes the displaced figure of the silent third world woman. Accused and blamed for things beyond human control, Rebati shrinks away from life itself. Rebati's presence no longer filled the house. Gone were the days when she would be heard mourning loudly. Nobody heard her voice. Nobody saw her out of doors. So this is the gendered subaltern. So she is forced to step back. She is forced to keep herself within the doors. She is forced to not to express herself. This is the gendered subaltern concept. A female who was deliberately cut short from all of the possibilities that she could achieve in future. So this concept was well acquainted, and this concept was matched with the concept of Rebati's outcome. So she could be called a third world woman, a gendered subaltern. On the next, from the same resource, I have taken that Rebati and Malala Yousafzai. There is a comparison, a slight one, but indeed it is very true. Rebati is a Pakistan's Malala Yousafzai, but it's with little difference. Like Rebati, Malala also fights for championing the cause of education, while the former fights suffers for self, the latter suffers for the society, inflicted with ruthless taboos, stigmas, blind beliefs and superstitions. Malala, the 10 years old Pakistani girl, was fired at her head on her way home to school by a masked gunman on October 9, 2012. The silent boarded the school bus Malala was riding in, injuring 2 other girls. A shooting left Malala in critical condition. As a young girl, she defied the Taliban in Pakistan and demanded the girls be allowed to receive an education. This is Malala Yousafzai and this is Rebati. So Rebati was demolished because of the society's taboo, society's superstition. She could fight like Malala, but did she get the scope? No, she didn't. And that is the reason why she was forced to keep back. She was forced to stay inside. So if she would do that, hopefully, if she would be a real character in our society, she may get a Nobel Prize, just like Malala Yousafzai. There is another point of view, which is a feminist point of view, and this I have taken from Shivakanta Behera's Fakir Mohan's Rebati, Empowerment, Identity and Feminism, where at the outset of the article, as I said, I have indicated the many layered meanings of Rebati to readers. The most visible layer is of course that of sufferings inflicted on Rebati. But on deeper analysis, one finds that the sufferings are again gender related. Rebati had to face them because she was a girl. Her isolation resulting in loneliness, poverty and hunger, even the abuse by the grandmother, all were due to her because of her gender status in a highly conservative communal social order. Since Rebati was a girl, she had to be confined to the 4 walls of her house. She had to suffer in loneliness and she had no right to education. That is why when the misfortunes fell on the family one after another, the grandmother immediately tried to link them with Rebati's education, which had really started 2 years back. As a result, Rebati became inauspicious and fallen in the eyes of the grandmother, the custodian of a conservative social system. Rebati had no right even to react to the blame thrown to her. thrown on her. More significant was the use of words by the grandmother to address Rebati. Towards the end of the story, the grandmother repeatedly used the words fire and fireplace for Rebati, implying that she was the source of all destruction. Like fire in a fireplace, she burnt down the Shyambandhu's family to ashes. Rebati became victim of such psychological torture and abuses because she inherited inequalities and discrimination. Being born as a girl in a traditional conservative Orisha society. So it is Odia society, conservative Odia society. It is very natural because of her girlhood, because she is a girl, she has to face so many obstacles. And this is why, this is the reason why this text can be interpreted from the feminist point of view. If you want to know more detail, I have given the resources here, one after another, so you can take all of them from here. You can go in detail. There are several resources, almost 7 resources I have cited here. So pick one. The first one is an internet reference. Second, Characters and Colors, Fakir Mohan Senapati and Women Education by Manisha Misra, 2021's publication. Rebati, a literary legacy for women's rights by Afrin Firdaus. Fakir Mohan's Rebati, Empowerment, Identity and Feminism by Shubhakanta Behra. That's recently I have mentioned about him. Status of Women in the Writings of Fakir Mohan Senapati by Dr. Ajay Kumar Panda. Representations and Images of Women in the Literary Production of Fakir Mohan Senapati, the early Odia writer by Krishan Sri. And lastly, Fakir Mohan Senapati's Rebati, the Modern Day Malala by Ramesh Chandra Adhikari. These are the references that I have so far gathered. If you want to know more about this, you can go on reading about these aspects in these materials. You can pick one and just read them. So it was a very interesting text so far. It was very regenerative enthusiasm, full of enthusiasm. The text that gives us an insight to the girls' education, to the present scenario of India as our nation, and definitely Fakir Mohan Senapati's craftsmanship of creating such a brilliant piece called Rebati. So far, till this, thank you very much to you all the viewers who have so far bear me throughout this time. So till the next video comes, it's okay. So good day to all of you. Thank you for watching again.